Thank you all for joining Wednesdays with Wes, where we talk about all things relationship. By the way, it doesn't matter what your status is, okay? Someone the other day mentioned, well, is that you guys? What is it, like a singles thing? I'm like, no, it's not a singles thing. It's not a couples thing either. It's a relationship thing. Doesn't matter what your situation is, your preferences. Doesn't matter. Ask away. Ask any question that you have so that we can make this, conversation about you, not about what I see that you need to hear. It's not about that at all, okay? All right. So, I know some of you have some questions about relationships. I know that some of you may have some comments or some other opinions about things I may have mentioned in the past, but there's no question that's a bad question. I do know there are certain questions that are a little harder to ask than others, though. So if you do find yourself with a question that you think is too hard, well, go ahead and slide in the DM. Ask us the question that way. One of my team members will put it on the thread. Nobody would know that you were the person that asked the question, all right? All right. Daphne, what up? Thanks for joining us. All right, so as you guys know, I'm going to explain it again. This is all about you. It's about making sure that we provide an environment that is reflective of what your questions, your concerns, your thoughts are all about when it comes to relationships, as opposed to it being prescriptive. So what I always ask of my audience, that's you, by the way, I ask that you ask any question at all. It doesn't matter at all. As a relationship coach, my goal is to make sure that I provide you some additional context, additional perspective, maybe a unique perspective, perhaps in certain instances for some people, the only male perspective. It all depends on what your circle or your network, is. But providing some additional perspective on some of the questions and concerns you may have about either a relationship you're in, something you heard about relationships, something that you saw in another relationship, or perhaps something that you've experienced in past relationships. We want to talk about all things that are relationships as it relates to you, because I want this to be something that you find relevant. All right. So who wants to ask a question? Now, for those who are just joining, I do have a bag, and that bag is a random and anonymous bag of questions. But I don't want to go to that bag yet. I want to hear from you. What's going on, Philly Vibes? I see you. Miss Jessie, what up? Rough Crowd, what's going on? She Shines, thanks for joining us. I see you. Daphne, okay. So ask away. What are your questions? What are your concerns? What are the things that you have on your mind as it relates to relationships? Mike, thanks for joining me. I appreciate that. So you already know how we get down. Some of you that have been here before, what questions do you have about relationships? Are there any myths that you heard? Any concerns you have? Any challenges you have? Anything you think is funny about the dynamics between men and women, or men and women? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is. No judgment at all. All right. DJ 007, thanks for joining us, man. So, DJ, you come out right off the bat with how do you combat the teachings of the Bible that day? We are not to get divorced for better or for worse. How do I combat that? Well, the divorce, in the Bible, it does refer to you not getting divorced. However, it also talks about things that you should never do also. So, in terms of, adultery, in terms of coveting other people, in terms of, those 10 commandments, there are a lot of things also that, the Bible kind of outlines as an exception, right? The Bible doesn't give you permission, to abuse your significant other too, by the way. So there are a lot of things that the Bible talks about that if you're reading the whole thing, right, it'll also make more sense, because what typically happens is we use the Bible like we use the Constitution as lawyers, and we tend to pull out, right, we pull out a certain passage, and then we want to prove our point with that passage without providing the proper context. So while the Bible talks about you shouldn't get divorced, it also talks about a number of things that you need to do to serve your significant other. And those are the things that become part of the binding contract. If you're not supporting the contract by way of your behavior and honoring one another, serving one another, supporting one another, as it's supposed to be outlined in the contract, in the bylaws of your marriage, of the Bible, then well, you should get a divorce in that situation, okay? Because the Bible doesn't tell you to death do you part by way of your mate's hands either. So remember that, all right? DJ 007, keep those questions coming, okay? I really appreciate that. Because, and by the way, DJ 007, if you don't know him, you should follow him. That's my DJ when we're doing the relationship script, and he makes sure to keep it real live when we're doing this thing in person. All right. Tracy Jacks, thanks for joining. I appreciate that. R. Benny, what up? Pumpkin from Pluto, you asked a question. If someone says they don't deserve your love, what is that person really saying? Well, there's a couple of things that person is saying, and you may have heard this yourself. I don't deserve your love. Sometimes it can be a matter of that person really admitting on the low, like on some low key, feeling guilty about some of the things that they're doing. Sometimes it can be a self-esteem issue too, by the way. So what does that mean? That means that someone may feel like they've never experienced this before and historically have had bad self-esteem because maybe their significant other in the past has made them feel like less than nothing. Or it could be the fact that they're experiencing something new with you and they don't believe that this is actually true. And so there has to be something wrong. Either they're not worthy, maybe there's something wrong with you, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So those are the types of comments that people share when they're in that space because they may feel awkward. But more times than not, when someone says they don't deserve your love, there's something wrong and you got to figure out what that thing is, okay? So I hope that was helpful. Nikki Bagby, thanks for joining. And Iman, thank you for joining. All right, so R. Benny, you asked a question. Why is it that when people break up, they want to make sure they are doing better than their old partner? This part of the message has been brought to you by Petty. All right, so people in that situation when they, when you break up, there's a petty spirit that we all have where we're saying, you know what, I want you to know that I'm doing better off without you. And we want to prove that to ourselves. This is one of our coping mechanisms that we have that's really tied to our ego when we want to basically say to ourselves, this was the right move. So when you break up with someone, typically, people do things like start joining the gym, start eating better. You may work harder, right? Get more money. I'm going to secure the bag now. I'm going to show her, I'm going to show him that, they were holding me down and all that good stuff. But most of it has to deal with the fact that with that separation, you want to feel good about the separation. You want to actually say to yourself, there are some tangible reasons behind why I broke up with this person. They may have been holding me back. They were the secret to my losses, right? And so we tend to want to do better as a result of that. And of course, there's a part that just wants to get back at that other person too, subconsciously or consciously, right? And show them that, they are the loser. So, we got to get over that. We got to heal and do better for the sake of doing better. And if for whatever reason you're breaking up because you're not in alignment, prayerfully, part of your healing is getting to a space and place where you can wish that person well as well, right? You want them to be happy as well. So hopefully you can get to that space, all right? Hopefully I answered your question the way, to your satisfaction. Matthew, what up? Thanks for joining. Rough crowd. You say I'm preaching. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Our Benny's talking about I'm back in the gym, but it's for me. That's what's up. That's good. You don't need any sympathy weight. All right, so shed it. And even though it's people refer to this season as cuffing season, not cubby season. Okay, so if you're looking more like a cubby, cut it out. Stay in the gym. This is the time to do the work, but do it for you. Don't do it to show up the fact that you broke up with someone, because that's really petty, and that won't last long too, by the way. So. Milani, what up? Thanks for joining us. If you're just now checking us out, this is the relationship script, all right? 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Wednesday, we talk about things relationship. That's it. What are your questions? What are your concerns? What are the things that you're experiencing, that you're going through, that your friend is going through, right? Whatever. If for whatever question that you have, for whatever reason, you can't ask it on this format, go ahead and slide in the DM. All right. And then my producer goes and takes it off the DM, puts it into a question right here, one of these slips, and I dig it in and I pull out perhaps your question. Who knows? So while I pulled one out, let's see what it says. I was at a well-known gay club and saw one of my close friends' husband. Should I mention it to her? The answer to that is maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't. The reason why is because when you're at a gay club and you see a man, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's gay. However, there's a high chance that he is. There's a very, very thin, very slim chance that he's not. And the reason why I say that is that I do think that there are some guys that may feel comfortable in any environment, including a gay club, and may not be gay. I think that exists. I'm not saying that I've seen it. I'm not saying I've even seen evidence of it. I'm just saying at the end of the day, there are people that can be of that same mindset and says, you know what? I don't care where I'm at. I'm here for a friend of mine's birthday party or something, and he's gay and I'm not. Okay, but if you see your friend's husband and he's in this gay club, well, at the end of the day, let things happen as they may, right? And you may, if you have a relationship with the husband enough that you can communicate to him, let him know, hey, you should share this with your wife. Perhaps she'd be interested in knowing that you're here at this spot. Or if she does know already, you ask her, hey, does she know you're here? And he may answer yes or no. In that case, if he says yes, you can always, in a sideways kind of way, bring it up with your wife. Say, oh, yeah, your hubby mentioned that you knew he was at such and such spot. That gay spot. And then leave it and let things happen as they are. But I wouldn't get in the middle of it, to be perfectly honest. At some point, they got to deal with their skeletons. All right? So that was one question. I need to hear more questions from you. All right? I see there are people that are going to the DM to ask their questions. So I guess we got some good ones in this bag. But I want to hear from you guys. Anybody brave enough to ask a question right here in this thread? If you're just now checking this out, every Wednesday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. here on The Relationship Script, we can talk about all things relationships, all right? If you got any kids nearby, please make sure that they are doing something else besides checking this out, all right? This is for a mature audience, and we want to have, be able to have the freedom and the wherewithal to have dialogue without having to whisper because of kids being around. So if they're around, go ahead and tell them to check out something else besides us, all right? This is all mature audience. Columbia, thanks for joining. Pumpkin says, hey, mind your business. I agree. You should mind your business in that situation. There may be some additional backstory and context for that situation in the club. But since I don't see you guys asking any questions right now, right, I'm going to go to the random and anonymous bag and I'll pull something out. Oh, Rough Crowd said, oh, hold on. Rough Crowd says, what is your thoughts on soul ties and how it applies to sex? You may not like my answer, but soul ties has nothing to do with sex at all. If you're having sex and it's with someone that you have a soul tie with, does it enhance it? I'm pretty sure it does, because at some point you're talking about, the combination of the body and the spirit and everything else kind of coming together and being in harmony. However, it doesn't really apply to sex, right? It doesn't apply to sex. You can actually have soul ties and it doesn't necessarily have to be sex right away, or at any point. There are people that you can have soul ties with and it doesn't necessarily have to apply to sex. If you are in an intimate relationship and this person is also your soulmate, then absolutely it's the icing on the cake. It's the cream filling, no pun intended. It's great, but it doesn't necessarily have to apply to sex. So you can actually have some soul ties with some really good friends, and sometimes due to the situation, you may think, well, because you and this person are so close and you guys have some soul ties, that it means automatically you should venture into something more intimate or sexual, and that's not really the case. You should really focus on discernment and finding out if that vibe is really something that has a potential to go into a more intimate space, or if you should keep it platonic and really acknowledge the fact that you have found a really good friend. So discernment, that's really key in that situation, all right? Okay, so Sunkiss, I see you. Des.com, what up? I see you. I am Trekker, what's going on, all right? Let's see what other questions we have here. So Columbia says, I believe it does have a lot to do with intimacy. Again, soul ties is a form of intimacy, and to be perfectly clear with you, intimacy is what you share with somebody on a deeper level than just what may be on the surface. So, but sex in itself can still very much exist on the surface, if you get what I'm saying. There are people that are having recreational sex, okay, and you're just a body that they're dealing with, okay. So that's not intimacy. Now, you can get intimate, meaning that you peel back the layers and you guys have an intimate moment. But real intimacy does not necessarily have to involve sex, okay? And when you start talking about soul ties, well, soul ties can definitely be one of the deepest forms of intimacy, and you still can be years and light years away from actually being in a sexual space, all right? So I just want to make sure you guys know that, all right? The deeper, meaningful connection that soul ties have to one's intimacy. That's the deeper, the more meaningful the connection. Yes, it can definitely lead to a soul tie, but that's really the definition. Really, it's something that's more deeper and meaningful than just having something in common or some level of attraction. All right. Rough Cross said, "I was told sex was a ritual, but they never really elaborated on what that meant." Well, sex is a ritual. I mean, sex is something that, well, it can be a ritual. Let me take that back, right? Because sex in certain contexts is a ritual. You talk about, consecration of something or a relationship. You talk about, having sex for the sake of having children, right? People look at that as a ritual, as, this is part of a process that is going to yield a particular outcome versus those that may say, you know what, I'm having sex because it's been 90 days or I've been on 10 dates with this person. Some people look at that as a ritual, right? If you really think about it, we've been dating for this amount of time, or now that we're married, we are going to have this, we're going to have sex. So in many ways, it can be a ritual if you think about it through that lens, if you look at it through that lens, all right? Pumpkin says sex can be ritualistic. Absolutely. Miss Eshaw, what's up? Thanks for joining. I appreciate that. All right. Ferris, what up? Thanks for joining. All right. If you're just now checking us out, this is the Relationship Script. And, the Relationship Scripts event, that I call, the Wednesdays with West edition. So it's just when I get an opportunity to talk with you about all things relationships. And I'm extremely excited to see you guys have joined. But I really want to hear more from you right now in terms of what types of questions, concerns you have, comments you have, all the above. As you already know, some of y'all can already say it, right? You're looking at this. This is my random and anonymous bag. These are questions that many of you have DM'd me, and because for whatever reason, the question you have is something that you don't want to be tied to, right? So that's it from the relationship random and anonymous bag. Columbia said, "What do you think about jealousy?" Jealousy. Jealousy comes in a number of different forms, and what I think about it overall is that it's a product of insecurity. Sometimes it can also be a product of the insecure relationship. And let me tell you the difference between the two. Insecurity in that individual, right? And that person that, doesn't feel like they are enough, and that the person that they're with more than likely is looking for someone else or something else, or creating opportunities to be in someone else's presence. That can lead to, a great deal of jealousy. The other kind of jealousy, again, is when you have a relationship that's really fragile altogether. And, you guys are not really, getting together in a way that you feel like you've actually created an intimate bond. And so because you don't have a lot of intimacy in your relationship, you may have some attraction, but not a lot of intimacy. Well, now there's not much holding you together, is there? So, the greater the intimacy, the greater it is for you to be able to actually, find a unique place with your mate and vice versa. So when you don't have that level of intimacy, then it means that person can pretty much be out of your life by way of another interaction or potential relationship, because you guys don't have much depth to your situation. All right. So I just hope that was helpful for you. Is it healthy to be an overzealous person? Zealous or overjealous? I just want to know. Okay. So, thanks, Isha. In terms of overzealous, talk to me a little bit about what you mean by that. So, overzealous versus overjealous. In terms of overzealous, we're talking about, someone that is really, high energy, really out there, engaging in certain ways, obsessed in certain ways about certain things. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. Is it healthy? It depends on your work-life balance. If you are a person that's really not taking good care of yourself and you just kind of going at 100 all the time, well, no, that's not healthy at all. If you can find an oasis in your partner, in your family, in your village, and be able to continue to move forward, then it's perfectly fine. You just need to know your limits and also make sure that you're continuing to nurture the different relationships that are close to you, and all the relationships that you actually impact. All right. So if you're just now checking me out, this is Wednesdays with Wes every Wednesday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. as long as my schedule will allow. That's why I kind of have it a little bit late, because I do work long hours, but this is great because it allows me to stay in touch with many of you in between my events that I'm having, called the Relationship Script. So the way that this works, if you don't know, ask questions. All right, all things relationship, I love to answer them. All right, there's no question that's dumb or inappropriate. Just as long as we're all being mature, that's all that matters. Okay, Columbia. You said, is it healthy to be overjealous? No, it's not healthy to be overjealous, because that means you're going to be obsessed, and more than likely you're going to misinterpret certain things that are happening in a relationship, and more than likely, as a result of that, you're going to chase your significant other away. I see some of y'all made some comments about the music, so I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit. But no, it's not distracting to me. My big Jamaican ass, I love to hear tunes in the background. So I love music. I don't need TV, but I must have music. Anyway, moving right along. So Ali asked the question: counting days to have sex doesn't seem organic unless the couple agreed to abstain. They enjoy getting to know each other and see what true intimacy is over time. I totally agree. But there's a lot of people that have a recipe, right? And their recipe is, a certain amount of days, a certain amount of dates, and then eventually, we'll do what we do. I think it's very problematic. I mean, because again, someone can just be there, and as a result of that, they deserve, a higher level of intimacy. They deserve your fruits, if you will. Not something that I'm on board for. So the other part about it is that you're also totally ignoring this whole thing called chemistry. Chemistry should play a key role. And if you really are with somebody and you guys have amazing chemistry, not to say that you automatically just skip off to X, Y, Z. No, but chemistry does play a big role in that. So, there's not just physical chemistry, but mental chemistry, which, by the way, is actually something that rarely gets talked about. But many of us are actually sapiosexuals. And let me just break down what that is. Sapiosexuals are people that are actually turned on and develop increased levels of attraction to someone based off of how intelligent they are, and they're really entertained and engaged by the dialogue that they're having with that potential significant other. So getting to those higher levels of intimacy by way of peeling back layers and finding out what you have in common and how you you basically can inspire and engage each other further. The more you have some good dialogue, it doesn't sound as sexy because we're so visual and we love to see all this sex and things of that nature. But the reality is that while medicine is definitely extended the lifetime of sexual activity, there's nothing like being able to have a really good conversation with someone and interact with someone in ways that can inspire you and engage you. So I really ask everyone that's in within this, I guess, parameter of video and Instagram land, if you can hear me, look for someone that you can have dialogue with in between the sessions. All right. It's not just about what they're going to do during that episode or all your episodes. It doesn't matter. There's more time that you're going to spend just talking, just interacting. So you better make sure that they can also make your toes curl that way. All right. Chocolate Cootie Pie, you said, what is the reasonable amount of time you meet someone to expect to advance from texting you to real-time conversations? The reasonable amount of time should be whatever time that you set. Real talk. You should not be in a space where you're saying to yourself, okay, we've been texting for 2 weeks. It's now time for us to have a real conversation. No, you set the rules, right? So at the time when you feel like you need to have a conversation, have the conversation. The problem is a lot of times is that for many people, they're really losing touch with, the desire for actual personal interaction, whether it is looking in someone's eyes and actually seeing them and talking to them, hearing a voice versus, just texting. And we've become a microwave society. So often just being able to do multiple things at the same time, we typically dilute the experience and become, used to it. We normalize it. So it's up to you. It's up to anyone out there that's really looking, that desires that personal interaction, for you to say after a couple of texts or an initial text, to say, hey, my number is, call me. Like, that's it. Not my DM, slide in my DM or continue to inbox me, but I want to hear your voice. And there's nothing wrong with that. All right. Let me read this really quickly from someone that wrote, I recently met someone on an online dating site. He suggested we chat offline. I gave him my number when he just texted me in WhatsApp. He never called, and then when I called the number, it was not a true number. Wow. So when I researched the number, it was one of those voice over IP numbers. When I questioned him about it, because I thought I was being catfished, he said he uses this just for WhatsApp and he will call me. He proceeded to chat back and forth for a week, but he never called. I'm a real grown woman, and I want to have a real conversation with people, not this texting stuff. My question is, what is a reasonable amount of time to text before expecting a real conversation with someone you just met? Again, that's the extended question, right? So, bottom line again, if you realize quickly that they're not with it, that they're not responding, jump, get out. That's it. Really that simple. I don't care how great the pictures look. I don't care how witty the texts are. If you can't actually have a conversation with that person, and I'm talking about, it doesn't matter when. If you're dating someone or if you're in a dating scene, you should be able to access that person. Bottom line, that's it. And if they were like, oh, I can't, leave, run, get away. Tell them to, delete your number or whatever. All right? Don't waste your time. All right? I Am Trekker says, how much should one compromise in order to keep a relationship going? Ouch. That's a tricky question. So here's the reason why it's tricky. When you say how much, right, it depends on what it is. There are certain things that I think that you shouldn't tolerate right off the bat. But when it comes down to, compromise, you got to think about what are the things that are just a deal breaker for you. For instance, if you are, if you are a person that likes, breakfast in the morning, you like to be served breakfast, but this person doesn't cook breakfast, is that something that is a deal breaker for you? This person, you like them to, make sure that they leave the seat down, but they always put the seat up. Is that a deal breaker? This person is extremely clean, but you're a messy person and you're always talking, about, who's going to clean the place up, or they're always badgering you about, cleaning up. You got to really think about what are the things that are on your list that are deal breakers and whether or not this is something that you can handle. Because, the Gottman Institute, that, these are the Gottmans are really, industry leaders when it comes to relationship coaching. They talk about how, close to 70% of the issues you have with someone in a relationship, or perpetual issues, meaning they're just going to continue. So you just got to figure out whether or not these issues that you have, the things that you're not really fond of, are things that you can live with. And then there's your answer when you figure that part out, okay? All right. So, Whitaker, what up? Thanks for joining. I appreciate that. Edwards, I see you. All right. D. Alexia, what's going on? Cats, what up? All right. So, questions. Alice makes a comment about sustainability is important. It is important for me to know that there is more going on in the relationship than just to be physical. I think relationships these days are short-lived because we don't. I totally agree. Jackie, what's going on? So, one of the things that are coming that we really don't struggle with, that we don't really work on as much because of the digital age, is developing deep, meaningful relationships. And part of that development means that there are going to be certain things you don't like about that person across the table from you, okay? There are going to be some things that you are not that fond of. And there are going to be some hills and valleys when it comes to you getting closer to your significant other. So don't get too caught up, right, in the notion that you can treat people like you do on the gram or on Facebook or whatever, and just literally swipe them the minute that they don't, you don't get along with them on a certain topic, or you don't see eye to eye. Work through it. If it's a person that's a high priority, then what you should do then is show that they are a high priority. Seek first to understand. Listen to them. Get a sense of their perspective, and maybe you can appreciate it, even if you're not necessarily someone that is, gung-ho about it or in full agreement. But the point of the matter is that you got to do a little bit of work in these relationships. Why? Because we don't fit perfectly like a puzzle. That's the reality. Compromise is absolutely necessary in a relationship. TCW, thanks for joining, all right? So everybody, ask away. I love your questions so far. Good stuff. You got some more questions? Go ahead and ask, all right? We are a little bit beyond the halfway mark of Wednesdays with Wes, where we talk about all things relationships. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Anything under the umbrella of relationships, I love to answer it, all right? Of course, you already know. I have my trusty bag of random and anonymous questions. I'm going to pull one. Oh, okay, I see some. Hold on. Des asked the question, what's my opinion of polyamory? Polyamory is something that I believe at the end of the day, it really, in most cases, it's really tied into something that's religious. Why? Because you do need to believe in order to kind of function within the paradigm of polyamory or polyamorous relationships. I myself am not a big fan of it. I think at the end of the day, while there's a lot of information that supports that in many civilizations, there are in many different areas of the world today, there are thriving communities that have polyamorous relationships as like the focal point or the center, the anchor of that community. However, there are a lot of things that come with that. See, if you think about it from a historical sense, polyamorous relationships were about economics. And, a man that was well off could actually raise a family and raise multitudes of families in a certain area. And that's what it was really about. Marriage in itself, a lot of interpretations of marriage is also about the same thing too, by the way. And that is, having a contract with someone and being able to provide for that person. And so many polyamorous relationships were really about economics. However, today you have situations where, people are all of the agreement and they create a definition for what love means for them and roles and responsibilities. And so as a result of that, you have some functional polyamorous relationships. I do believe that there's a lot of repression of, true feelings, feelings of insecurity, jealousy, and things of that nature that exist in those polyamorous relationships. And most of them, usually, erode or blow up in some shape or form, especially when you talk about polyamorous relationships that are not centered, or going through religion. All right? Hope I answered your question on that. Rob, thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. El Denise, what up? I see you. We're talking about all things relationships. Thanks for that great question, Des. I appreciate that. So, what I'm looking for is questions from you, the audience. Now, I was just about to pull out this question when I saw that Des asked the question. So, I think I answered this already. What are my thoughts on soul ties? Well, maybe I didn't. Soul ties, I think, are I don't know. I think soul ties can be a very subjective kind of designation. And here's what I mean by that. Some of you out there have lived long enough where you recognize that you were in a certain season in life. You know, whether you may have just been coming out of a relationship or, you know, coming out of school or, you know, or something else that happened in your life. Maybe you lost a loved one. There are different things that happen to us at some point where sometimes you really gravitate to other people because of the emotional space that you're in. So I do believe that, you know, soul ties that are real soul ties, they exist and they persist through different seasons, okay? Unfortunately, many times people, you know, they slap that sticker or that title or that designation of this person is a soul tie, this person is a soulmate, as a you know, prematurely is what I'm saying. So I think you need to go through a number of different seasons before you can actually say that someone is, you know, that you have some kind of soul tie. All right. That's just my perspective on it. But do I believe in it? Yes, I do believe that, you know, you can have someone that you're tied into, that you have an affinity for, that is really deep, and that it can exist for a very long time. All right. System occurs. What up? Long time. Oh, Boogie, I see you. So we're talking about all things relationships, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions as it relates to relationships. No question is a bad question, all right? So before I go into this, again, does anyone in the audience have a question? Anything at all? I'm listening, all ears, all right? What does love at first sight mean? Love at first sight means that you see someone that is the prototype or, you know, or the prototypical expression of what was on your list, right? So sometimes, you know, young girls back in the day, they would say, you know, someone that is tall, dark, and handsome, right? So you see someone that's tall, dark, and handsome, you're like, oh my God, there you go. You know, fellas, you hear that, you know, girls got to have certain kind of dimensions, right? In terms of her face, her body, and everything else. And then you see someone and you're like, oh my God. That combined with, you know, how they may move or something they may say or do may be, you know, enough to make us a fan or feel like, you know, it's a love at first sight type of situation because they really are at the top of, you know, I would say the exemplary expression of what we really see as the ideal mate at first sight. So don't be fooled though, all right? You know, just because you see it, you know, at the end of the day, it still could be fool's gold. So it can look shiny and even appear to be 24 karat, but just wait a second, all right? Pay attention. You know, it might turn green, all right? XL Tribe, thanks for joining, all right? So you going to describe yourself, huh? No, I wasn't describing myself, system. Go ahead with that. I wasn't talking about me at all. I was talking about what people talk about as it relates to, you know, the ideal, you know, guy. So I was giving that. That ain't me. I ain't that guy. So anyway, it was got jokes. You just got on here and you starting already. Anyway, so Des, you say you don't believe in it. You're just curious. No, I don't overall believe in love at first sight. I believe in infatuation at first sight, but not love at first sight. However, there are some people that can prove us wrong. People that met and fell in love and they're still together. But that to me is I don't know. I call that lottery love. You know, that's 1 in a billion times that it actually happens. All right. There you go. System talking about just lusty at first sight. I agree. And Lydia's jumping in on kicking me about the comment. Here y'all go already. Here comes the peanut gallery. So anyway, moving right along. If you're just now checking this out, this is Relationship Scripts, Wednesdays with Wes. I'm Donovan Hitchmaster West, and we're talking about all things relationships. Looking forward to answering your questions. Do you, my audience, have any more questions as it relates to relationships? It doesn't matter what your status is. Single, married, separated, divorced, in a situationship. No shade, no judgment. We just want to hear your questions so that I can provide you some additional perspective on, how to, interpret that situation. All right. Des, you asked a question. How did you become the relationship expert? That's a very good question. So, I'm celebrating 10 years in terms of relationship coaching. As of 2019. So I started in 2009, and during that time, I was doing some relationship coaching along with a colleague of mine, Sophia Avery, and we met with singles and couples and all that other good stuff. And shortly after that, we started writing articles on relationships as well. And we wrote them for Tiffany Bacon, a local radio celebrity. For a show that she had called Whispers in the Dark. So there we wrote about maybe 40 different articles on relationships. Also, I trained through the Gottman Institute in terms of relationship coaching. I belong to the Greater Philadelphia Healthy Marriage Coalition, even though I'm not married. I used to provide a perspective on, a single person's perspective on healthy relationships and things of that nature. So what else? Worked in social service, celebrating 20 years in social service, serving families, individuals. I've also coached tons of couples, individuals as well, and that's why people call me that. I ain't call myself that. I got Hitchmaster. That was actually a name that the Philadelphia Inquirer gave me, so I kept it. Have you Hitchmaster hitched anyone? Because, yeah, of course I have. And there you go, systems playing around again. I'm trying to tell you. I'm going to get you. It's okay. People's ring finger are extra cold on the East Coast. Listen, you disappeared. Come on back home, all right? Stop playing with me. Anyway, got the peanut gallery all watching. Anyway, so Lydia is... in all seriousness, he really good at what he does. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What else? And by the way, shout out to also my colleagues that really do this all day, every day. Like Dr. Marquita. She's amazing. Dr. R.G. Allen. There's a ton. There's a ton. Tiffany. There's a ton. So. They're my teammates during these different events that I do called the Relationship Script. So, I provide a perspective, but they also provide an additional perspective. All right. So looking forward to you guys coming out to the next one. All right. Whitaker says happy social service anniversary. Thank you very much. You got 22 years in the game. That's what's up. So, Allie says, I'm still stuck on a mentor comment from last week. I have a mentor and can see how proximity can change the dynamics of attraction. Oh, yeah, you were talking about the question. There was a question, I believe, where someone was hanging out or dating someone, and then at some point they kind of turned on them and kind of approached them as if they were a mentor. But got to be careful. I'm not sure if you're a sugar daddy, a zaddy, or a cougar. Be careful, in terms of, communicating what your intentions are so that you're not in a situation where someone's looking at you and they're looking at you like a mentor and you're looking at them like a snack. Be careful, all right? Make sure your interests have been, clearly stated, all right? Let's talk love and life. Thanks for joining us, good brother. I understand you had a great event last week at Green Soul, man. I wish I could have got there sooner. But thanks for joining me this Wednesday evening at Wednesdays with Wes. We're talking all things relationships. So, if you have any questions that came out of your conversation that you want to ask, feel free to ask it. But, we're here to talk about all things relationship here from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Of course, I got my random and anonymous bag. I don't want to go to it yet because I feel like somebody out there has a question that they want to ask or they're about to ask right now. So if you're typing, I'm going to give you about 3 more seconds to get that question through. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. So let me go ahead and grab a question out of here. When do you draw the line between going to counseling and just breaking up? It's a good question. So the when is when you first of all, when you go to counseling, you have to commit to a couple of things. One, that you're going to give it all that you have when it comes to counseling. And counseling is an opportunity to provide you some additional perspective, some ideas around how to save your relationship. So you have to literally surrender to the idea that whatever they suggest is something that you're willing to try and do 100%. If you really believe that you're done, then wrap it up. One of the things that I ask my clients when I'm sitting there talking with them about relationships is I ask them if they're done or if they're just tired. If you're tired, it's okay, I understand. But if you're done, let's be clear that you're done. And that means we don't have to waste any more time, any money. I'm not asking for a whole lot of money. I don't want it, because if you're done, you're done. Let's just go ahead and think about how to create some opportunity for healing, to communicate through other logistics if you have children together or properties and all that other good stuff. And it is what it is. Pronounce the relationship dead on arrival. However, if you're just tired, what I'm going to ask is that you give it, all that you have when you step in there. Because most times what typically happens is, as there are certain suggestions, provided, you say, well, but last time, pause. You just went to the history. You went to the History Channel. And you'll never win, because you have to, you're going to go ahead and live that relationship from what they did in the past. And so, again, you may be showing signs that you're done. If you are doing your best to make some modifications in terms of your behavior, and you're doing the same thing, your significant other is just doing the same thing, they're going through the same motions and they're not really trying, then at some point you may need to pull the plug, because relationships are work. And if you don't see your significant other really working to communicate more with you, to participate in the solution for your relationship, then at the end of the day, you can't do it by yourself. It really does take two. All right. Any other questions that you have? Please, I'm listening. You got any comments or anything? I'm all ears when it comes to the relationship scripts Wednesday with Wes. All right. If not, I'll go back to my grab bag of random and anonymous questions, but I'd like to hear from you. Any questions at all? Going once. Going twice. So, thanks, Des. You asked the question. So, what do you think about counseling for couples that are not married? I think it's great. If you're not married, that's fine. What you're doing is you're practicing good habits. So, you should go to couples counseling if you're not married. Why? Because at the end of the day, everything you get in your world needs a checkup. Your body, your car, you do things with your house in terms of maintenance. Why aren't you doing the same thing when it comes to your relationship? So practice healthy habits. And one of those healthy habits is to do what I call a relationship checkup. Doesn't mean there's something wrong. You're just checking in. Why? Because we all are changing. There's certain things you like today that you're not going to like tomorrow or next year. There's certain habits that you had a couple years ago that you don't have now. So how are you changing? How are you evolving? And how are you communicating through that? Counseling provides the right kind of environment for you to actually be able to talk without, and feel safe, especially if you find the right kind of a relationship coach or counselor or therapist in that space. Okay, so I think that's very important that you do that. Also, when you get married, you should still do relationship checkups. The problem is the majority of us, when we are in front of a counselor, it's almost too late. The relationship is on life support. So you don't want to do that. Practice, again, preventive medicine, all right? Preventive measures, and get that relationship checkup, all right? Pumpkin says, how do you cut off an intimate relationship and still remain friends? Well, this is a very good question as well. The number one way that you do that is you start going back to what do you have in common, and what are the things that actually brought you together as friends, and focus on that. You also want to talk about how the friendship really does, has a high priority, a high value in your world, and you want to establish some kind of consensus as to, why that should be important to them as well. Obviously, when you're backing up from an intimate relationship to friendship, there's a sense of rejection that your significant other or you may be feeling. And that's something that you should actually be very candid about, be very transparent about, and vulnerable to the idea that this person may not be feeling you in that sense, but at the end of the day, they still value your friendship, and that should mean something to you as well. But at the end of the day, remember something. Just because you may have an attraction or you guys may get along doesn't automatically mean a happily ever after. So there is a high likelihood that a friendship that went intimate can go back to friendship if the two are in a space where they can actually, accept a new definition of how they're going to move forward. All right. All right. So I see Dez and Pumpkin from Pluto. They did the tag team on the questions, and they're tag teaming on the thread in terms of giving each other props. I appreciate that. I appreciate the questions from you guys. So, Levon, thanks for joining. If you're just now tuning in, this is the Relationship Scripts Wednesday with Wes, and I'm Donovan Hitchmaster West, here to talk about all things relationship. If you like what I'm saying and you appreciate the additional perspective, please make sure that you share this with other people, because I just want to share the information. There's no other ulterior, motive or anything like that. I just want to make sure we get people into the rhythm of talking about relationships, communicating more transparently, and as my buddy Dr. R.G. Allen would say, having some courageous conversations. Ali says relationships and friendship is tough, so it depends on the level of maturity and how the relationship ended. I agree. Obviously, if you find yourself that you're in this place and space that you can, break up in an amicable way, you want to be able to do that. However, if it really blows up, sometimes the only thing that can really triage that situation is time. All right. Julia, what up? Thanks for joining us. So, any more questions before I go to the grab bag? I got 7 minutes left, but I want to make sure that every second counts. So I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds for another question. And if not, then I'll go to here. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Trevor Noah recently posted a video saying living together pre-marriage may be what is causing most breakups. What are my thoughts? I think that you can definitely break up with someone because, the idea is that when you're living with someone, it's still voluntary, right? And when you're married and then you live with someone, you're thinking along the lines of, okay, no, I have a lot more skin in the game, and so I'm going to work through that. So to some extent, living together can definitely break up a relationship. But again, it goes right back to what are your non-negotiables when it comes to your relationship. If there are things that the living situation may cause that, you may say, what, I can't with this person. That's one aspect. Another aspect of it is that when you're living together, there are many people that say, what, I'm living with you, so what else do you want? Is there anything, that person may be content. And that in itself may break up the relationship. Another thing about living together is that you may be living together prematurely and underestimating just how much of an impact that's going to have on your overall relationship because you haven't really ironed out things such as, the roles and responsibilities, schedules, really understanding one another's love language and being able to demonstrate that in a way that it helps to nurture the relationship as you guys are together. So I hope I was able to give you a couple of quick points on that question related to Trevor Noah's comments. Okay, let me see what else we got here. So Jackie, you say, how do you know if you're dealing with a narcissist? That's good. That's a good question. So you know how you're dealing with a narcissist. You're dealing with a narcissist when you start thinking about where the center of gravity is as it relates to the conversation. if the narcissist is overly consumed with themselves in the conversation, if they bring everything back to what they're experiencing or something that's about them, you can definitely pick up on a narcissist. Also, when it comes down to serving, if the narcissist is not into serving, a narcissist often is about how they can be served, and so they're not going to ask too much about you, how you're doing. They may not be around to accompany you through tough times, especially emotionally, and they may be quick to kind of disappear when you may need them most in that space. But narcissists overall are going to they're going to show you. They're going to show you that it's just all about them, and they're not going to do things that you may need them to do. It could be as simple as rubbing your back. It can be as simple as just asking how are you feeling about something. Narcissists may not even see the value in just something simple like that, because they may be just overly consumed with who they are, what they can get, and how they may be able to leverage your kindness to serve them. All right. So I feel like I've dated one. That's what System of Curve says. Okay. We need a whole night to discuss narcissists. I see we touched on a serious nerve here as it relates to narcissists, but narcissists are the people that typically they're just gimme, gimme, gimme. Very rarely are they giving, but people that are sometimes you can look at someone and say, well, this person is a narcissist, but the reality is they could be someone that is just focusing on how to further develop themselves. The real sniff test comes down to when it comes, to conversing, communication. If they're asking about you, if they're concerned about you, if they're doing things to serve their community, if they're doing things to serve their family, their significant others in their circle, child or children, family members, things of that nature, they tend not to be a narcissist. But at the end of the day, you got to watch out, just be careful. So we're coming down to the last couple of minutes. It's 9:58. Very important, because ultimately what you're talking about, is waiting to next Wednesday. Yeah. I'm talking about waiting to next Wednesday for another Wednesday with Wes. But no, it's always a pleasure to serve you guys. Hopefully, if you have any questions that were not answered, you've already hit me up in a DM so that I can still answer them. But I'm looking forward to making sure that you guys out there in IG world are communicating about relationships. All right. So one last thing, because as you can see, I'm still in my office, planning for our holiday party. The African American Chamber of Commerce for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. We're having a holiday party, and it's also a welcome reception. Since I just took it over, it's going to be at Rivers Casino, formerly known as Sugar House Casino. It's going to be lit. I got a nice band. UGO is going to be in the building. Great DJ is going to be in the building, and we're going to be having a great time. So it's going to be, I'm telling you, it's going to be epic. I'm expecting over 600 people to come through and just have a really good time on Thursday, December 12th, 2019. All right. So if you're interested, you can always check us out online at www.aachamber.org. www.aachamber.org. All right. So I got 30 seconds remaining. Just want to say thank you very much. Jackie, I see you there. Looking for clarity. No problem. We can talk offline if you have some more questions, but it's really been my pleasure to serve you guys. You said nice music, great talk. Hey, thanks very much. I just played something on YouTube and let it do its thing, but looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Please tell a friend, all right? So 5, 4, 3, until next week. See you then.